I wanted to give a demonstration that I thought at this point might clear up some questions. So I am sharing my screen and I'm going to create a class called Student. And then I'm also going to create a class that has a main method in it. So when you create an application, it will have several objects that work together that make that application do what it's supposed to do. So if I create, say, a student registration system, I might have a student class, I might have an instructor class, I might have a course class, and you can think of a class as a template that is used to create objects as the application needs it. So in my student class, I can have instance variables or attributes that is encapsulated that describes a student. It's something that a student knows. So a student could know its first name and last name, and a student can also know its ID. So I might have a first name attribute, I might have a last name attribute, and I might have an ID. We'll call it student ID attribute. And then I would like to make these private so that the access to these are a bit constrained. And one of the reasons to do this is it's nice to have set methods that actually validates the values before they get changed. So in other words, and I'm not going to actually do this in this example because there's a few things that I want to get through first. But so you can get a new first name. So we'll just put new first name, and then we can set that first name or the F name value to this new first name that gets passed in. Now, we'll get more into methods and getters and setters eventually, but I just wanted to give you this example because another question that has come up is this idea of whether this should be static or should be void. So methods, when you declare a method, you have to state what it returns. In this case, it doesn't return anything, so I put void. But if I had created a get first name method, and notice that it doesn't accept any values because it doesn't need any information or data coming in, this would just return the first name. And that first name is of type string, so I have to say this returns type string. So that's the difference on when you use a void and when you use something else. If I had created a get student ID method that would return that student ID, then I would have public int get student ID and it would return student ID. Now, notice there's no main method in this class. This class is just serving the purpose of creating this template that dictates what kind of information is stored on any object that is of student type and what kind of behavior, what kind of functionality do objects of this type do. So a class encapsulates what an object knows about itself and what an object can do about itself. And so I could use this class in an application. So here I've got a starter of an application. I just called it student example. And this is where my main method is. Now, if I want to use anything in here, I can't just do something like this. So I can't just do fname equals Cheryl, okay? Because you're going to get this error that it cannot find the symbol. And if I decide to just put student dot first name, okay, it's not happy either because it's telling me that this has been declared as private. So then you might say, oh, well, I've got this set method. So let me try this set method here. So if I try to do student dot set fname and I pass in this value, it's not happy either because it's giving me this message, non-static method set fname cannot be referenced from a static context. And so this is causing you guys, or some of you, to think, well, I need to put static here too, okay? To get rid of this, get rid of this. Actually, it would go. Anyway, I don't get too much going on here that's confusing. So the problem is you're not calling the constructor first. So before you use a class, okay, so a class is just a template. This is not an object. It's a template to create objects from. So the first thing you need to do is construct a student. So I'll just call it student1 equals new student, like that, okay? And then what you do is you call the method on that object, all right? So I've got a student class. I just created an object from it, call it student1. And now student1 can have its own first name, its own last name, its own student ID, and it also has the ability to do things like set first name and get first name. So I would, instead of calling student.set first name, I would call student1 set first name. So don't create any static methods. That is not in the scope of what we are learning right now. But I do want to show you where static methods are appropriate and you will use them. So you're not going to create any static methods, but you will use some static methods eventually. So in the Java API, so this API, you can think of it as a library of pre-built classes that has behavior or functionality that you can use. It's already been developed in your code. There is a class called math that provides you with a whole bunch of math functions, okay? So, and here's a list of them. We've got absolute value. We've got things related to trigonometry. We have methods for figuring out which number is the biggest, which one's the smallest, a method to take something to the power of, something that returns a random value, something that rounds a number, and so on. Now, every single method in this math class is defined as static. So they are going to have that keyword static put in front of their method. So notice that, let me go down to this, where is it? Power. Okay, so POW takes two values, A and B. A is going to get raised to the power of B. So if you pass in two values into power, it's going to return a double value. That's why you see this double here. Now it's got static here because you do not have to create a bunch of math objects that each math object can provide these math functions for you. You just need that one math class. So these are basically class methods. So in this case, you can just do math.pow because of that static, because this class is not meant to have several objects running around in an application. It is just strictly there to encapsulate these utility kind of methods that you can call at any time. So if we go back to our application here, then we can call math.pow, and I'll just do 5 to the power of 2, and I'll print out that result. So I'll do a system.out.print 5 to the power of 2 equals something like that. Okay, so notice that this, just using this class method this way doesn't give me an error, and I didn't have to construct an object of math class first, because that's not how math is meant to be used. However, for your assignments, when you've got that myClone class, that is meant to be used as in an application that there could be lots of people logged into, say, this virtual world, and they would have their own clone in that virtual world. So, to use any instance variables or methods for an object, you have to construct an object first by making a constructor call. All right, so it's not a bad thing to try to work ahead with concepts that we haven't covered yet, but it can also create a little bit of confusion, and so I just wanted to clear up these two concepts, one about what static does, and the other what the purpose of void is. So when you use void for a method, when you would use static for a method, and to also clarify that what a class does. So class, think of it as a template. You're going to create maybe one or more objects from that template, depending on what the application does, and to also realize that separate from all these classes that you may create for an application, you're going to have the application. You're going to have this one main method that kind of orchestrates what goes on. It orchestrates when you need a particular object created. It orchestrates the overall functionality of this application. Now, our application that we're developing for this class is a very scaled down version of a virtual world, but it could be expanded into something a lot more sophisticated. So you develop things brick by brick, and you can think of these classes as bricks. All right, hopefully that helps. Thank you for watching this video.